Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on, trying to work out what the day is, Tuesday I think, isn't it? Totally lost track of time at the moment. Apologies, not done any videos for the last few days. I'm off at the moment on holiday over the Christmas period, so pretty busy trying to get everything prepared for the kids for Christmas, as I'm sure plenty of you are around the world where you're watching this right now. I hope you've all enjoyed the build-up to Christmas. The World Cup is, of course, over. Arsenal now not far away, 6 days away from returning to action in the Premier League with that game against West Ham. Domestic football over here is back today. The Carabao Cup starts today. Got games over the next few days. Of course, Arsenal not in action, having been knocked out against Brighton just before the break for the World Cup. Got a big game coming up on Thursday, though. Liverpool versus Manchester City in the Carabao Cup. So straight back into it after the World Cup came to an end on Sunday. Of course, I wasn't at the Juventus game on Saturday. Like I said, I'm on holiday now, so I didn't go to the Juventus game. I'm sure plenty of you watched it. I watched bits and pieces of it, watched the highlights. Seemed like one of those games really for Arsenal, pretty much total domination. Couldn't score, and then the randomness of giving away 2 own goals. I think Juventus had 2 shots on target the whole game, didn't even score any of them, and Arsenal give them 2 own goals, and they end up winning 2-0. So frustrating way to kind of end the warm-up games going into the West Ham. I've spoken a lot in these videos in the past about the need to build up plenty of momentum in the build-up to that game against West Ham. They've done that in Dubai, a couple of good wins, won the tournament over there. Just wanted to beat Juventus to go into that game against West Ham. I don't think it should have too much of a negative impact on the team because they did play pretty well, they did dominate, but it's just the fact they couldn't score, and I think that's going to be the key thing over these coming weeks and months with Jesus being injured. You know, there's going to be a lot of focus on, can Arsenal score the amount of goals that they need to? Can they create enough problems, be that much of a threat in the final third to continue the brilliant run that they've been on? Every time it doesn't happen, every time they don't score a goal, don't win a game, I think all the focus is going to be on that area of the pitch. Which is just normal, to be honest, when you've lost such a key influential figure through injury. There's going to be a lot of focus on whether you've got enough to replace him. I saw Eddie came in for a bit of negativity after the game, certainly on social media, which obviously doesn't really gauge all fan opinion. Social media is toxic at the best of times, but I thought it was a bit harsh looking at the replays. I thought Eddie seemed to play all right, to be honest. I mean, he scored a couple of goals that were ruled out. One for offside, it was offside. The other one looked like it was a foul, I think, on the back post, which on another day wouldn't have been given. So he did have the ball in the net twice. He hit the post, probably should have scored that one, but he still seemed to cause a few problems with his movement. He was getting in areas, and I think as long as Eddie's doing that, I'm not going to be overly concerned because more often than not, he will score. We've seen that. He's proven it in the past. I don't think Eddie's finishing ability can really be called into question. So I think if he gets opportunities, he will score more often than not. Saturday just was, felt like a bit of one of those days to me from the brief highlights that I saw. So I'm not overly concerned about that. I mean, Mikel Arteta spoke afterwards in the press conference. As you would expect, he tried to sort of back Eddie Nketiah up. He knows there's going to be a lot of focus on Eddie now. It's just has to be. It's a given. With Jesus out, everyone's going to be focusing on Eddie, and if he doesn't score, it's going to be like, he's not good enough, he can't replace Gabriel Jesus. Again, I think that's a little bit harsh because I think goal scoring wise, I mean, Jesus has only scored 5 goals this season, so I don't think so much it's the goals that's going to be the issue, it's what everything else that Jesus brings to the team. That's what Arsenal are going to miss massively when he's not away, because even when he's not scoring, and he hasn't been scoring for a fair while now, Jesus, he is contributing massively every single week to every single win with his movement, with his work ethic, with the ability to pull players out of position, to put pressure on defenders. That's what Eddie's going to have to do. If Arsenal are going to continue to play as well as they have been, I feel like Eddie's going to have to step up and do that sort of job. It's not so much about the goals. He will score, I'm absolutely convinced of it. But yeah, hopefully, touch wood, he scores sooner rather than later, because Arsenal are going to need those goals straight away. West Ham, it's going to be a difficult game. West Ham on Boxing Day, they haven't had anywhere near as much disruption as Arsenal have had when it comes to World Cup players. They've had an awful lot of time to focus purely on this game, with a lot of the players who are going to be involved in it being with the squad. So Arsenal are going to have to be bang on it when they come up against West Ham. And the last thing you want after this break is to not get 3 points from your first game, especially at home. Arsenal need to hit the ground running, show everybody that they're going to pick up where they left off, and that Jesus' injury isn't going to completely derail their season like a lot of people are expecting it to be. So really important, that West Ham game on Boxing Day. Really, really important. Although I am on holiday at the moment, I will be at that game, so watch out for all the usual stuff from me in and around that game on Boxing Day at the Emirates. The sort of press conference afterwards, I'm sure you've seen it all by now. Mikel was talking a lot about some of the injured players and the World Cup players when they're all going to be returning. He spoke about Emile Smith-Rowe, said that he hadn't been able to train for a few days last week, but he was hoping that he was going to start training this week. He spoke a lot about how Arsenal need Smith-Rowe. He said he's been out for a while. He needs to get some game time to get up to speed. We really need him, and we're going to welcome him back with open arms because he's a really important player. We need him fit on the pitch. And again, I've spoken about this many times on these videos, how important getting Smith-Rowe fit is going to be for Arsenal. But, I think you've got to kind of realise that he's been out for so long. He's not been playing for so long that it's not going to be a sort of click of the fingers Smith-Rowe back to the player he was when he broke into the team in such scintillating fashion alongside Bukayo Saka a sort of year and a half ago. He's going to need time to get up to speed. He's going to need time to get his sharpness back. It's not going to be an immediate thing with Smith-Rowe, but he is going to be so important in the second half of the season. Arsenal need goals. They need goals from everywhere. Smith-Rowe is one of the players they have who can score goals. He's shown it in the past. They need to get him fit. He needs to be an option that Mikel Arteta is going to be able to call upon. So fingers crossed, he can start training this week and he will be ready. I think we can probably rule out West Ham as the potential return date for Emile Smith-Rowe now. You're probably looking beyond that, but hopefully, fingers crossed, sooner rather than later, he will be back. And the same goes for Alexander Zinchenko, who Mikel Arteta again was speaking about, and he seemed to suggest that he is very much nearly ready. And I think what we've seen with Zinchenko is when he is fit, Mikel is not worried about just throwing him straight back into the team. He clearly thinks he's so important. So hopefully Zinchenko can get some training sessions under his belt ahead of the game against West Ham. I think Tierney's done fine in his absence. But I think Zinchenko, what he brings to the team, the flexibility he brings to the team, is clearly very, very important. Mikel Arteta really, really wants him available. And it's a bit of a concern, Zinchenko, this season. I'd never really thought of him as an injury-prone type player when he was at Manchester City, but he's just really struggled to be fit and to stay fit since he's made the move to Arsenal. Hopefully it's just one of those things, and he will, over the second half of the season, show that he can play week in, week out on a consistent basis, because Arsenal absolutely need him as well. He said, Mikel said he's progressing well. He said that Tomiyasu's now running back on the pitch. He's had that hamstring injury that he was basically managing the whole way through the World Cup. He had it before the World Cup. He is back at London Colney. He is back training. It's just a case of getting him ready, and Arsenal don't want to take any chances with Tomiyasu. They want to make sure he is fully fit before he returns, but hopefully he will be available against West Ham. And Bukayo Saka and Martinelli, they'll be joining him from this week. Martinelli was at the game on Saturday, whenever it was. And, he's very much going to be ready to hit the ground running. I don't think those players, because they've been training so hard during the World Cup, yes, you have a little bit of break, sort of mentally more than anything, just to get over what happened in Qatar. But they're going to be sharp, they're going to be fit, they're not going to need too much time to get up to speed. So they'll be joining in this weekend. I absolutely, as long as no one's injured, I absolutely think both Martinelli and Saka will be starting against West Ham. I'd be absolutely stunned if they weren't. And when you put those two into the team as well, I think suddenly, when you look at what happened against Juventus and the fact they didn't score, I think you stick Martinelli and Saka into that team against Juventus with the absolute domination Arsenal had in that game. I don't think Arsenal wouldn't have been scoring. So I think they'll look a lot stronger in the final third against West Ham once Saka and Martinelli come back and add to the options that Mikel Arteta has there. He says they'll come straight in. He said, when talking about Saka and Martinelli, he said they'll come straight back into the rhythm of things, shape and mould of the team. We're waiting for them. We're desperate for it, and they're desperate to be back as well. I've spoken to both of them. Gabby was here at the game against Juventus with a big smile on her face and big energy. He's ready to go again. It's going to be a big boost for the team. So absolutely, you look at that Arsenal starting 11, you got Saka and Martinelli in it against West Ham, you're going to feel a hell of a lot better than you did in the build up to the Juventus game. Bit of a blow from that Juventus game, the Reiss Nelson injury. Haven't had confirmation yet from Arsenal on how bad that injury is. He looked sharp from what I saw in the highlights as well. Before that, I thought he looked sharp in Dubai. So it's a real bitter blow for Reiss Nelson. He's obviously playing for his Arsenal future as well over the second half of the season. So the last thing he would have wanted was what looked like some sort of muscle, a hamstring injury potentially. That's the last thing he wanted. You could see how disappointed he was when he went off the pitch. He'd been looking bright up to that point. And yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's not going to be too bad, but we'll await official confirmation from Arsenal on just how long Reiss Nelson is. Mikel Arteta was speaking afterwards and said he didn't think that injury, if it was a bad one, would change Arsenal's transfer plans, and I absolutely don't think it would. I think what Arsenal are going to do in January, or what they're hopefully planning to do in January, an injury to Reiss Nelson is not going to overly change that. As good as it's been to see Reiss sort of push his way back into the fold over the first half of the season at Arsenal, I don't think they'd have been looking at Nelson and thought, you know what, Nelson's playing well, we're not going to bring in a winger in January. It just wasn't going to be the case. Clearly they do want a winger, and Nelson's injury isn't going to change that. They'll certainly be still going for the market. We know, Mudryk is a big priority for Arsenal. Nothing really has moved forward with that at the moment. It seems it's just a case of seeing if Arsenal can come up with a sort of price tag that Shakhtar are asking for. Publicly, Shakhtar have said no one's close yet. They are talking with Premier League clubs. They've been in London for those talks, but no one is close yet. Whether things can move forward over the next few days before January, we'll have to wait and see. There's lots of stuff, lots of transfer stuff. Is it Matheus Cunha at Atletico Madrid, Brazilian forward, been linked with Arsenal? I don't think there's not been anything firm from Arsenal in that one. I mean, he's a player that's on the market. He's a forward, so he's going to be linked with Arsenal. They're probably, looking at the fact that he is there, but I think he's far more likely to go to one of the other Premier League clubs who seem to be sniffing around him, like Wolves, Aston Villa. I think in terms of Arsenal, from what I've spoken to Ruben, who works for Goal over in Spain, very close to Atletico Madrid, Ruben Uria, he's fantastic when it comes to Madrid. He seems to think that there's been nothing official between Arsenal and Atletico for him, and that if there is interest, it's just kind of Arsenal in the background for him at the moment. So not one I'd be getting too excited about at this point. Palmeiras, Danilo stuff. Their president's been talking. He says he's a very important player for our squad. As of now, we've not received any proposals from any teams abroad. We haven't had any consultations. If we do, we'll analyse what's best for Palmeiras and the player. I've said before that, from my understanding of this one, that Palmeiras would be open to potentially letting him go this January. Arsenal, we know, have been interested in Danilo before. They were kind of pushing to try and see if they could get something done in the summer. It didn't. But from what my understanding on this one is, at the moment, Arsenal haven't made any official contact. I think Monaco are one of the clubs that are interested. I think they've certainly asked recently, out of all the interested clubs, they've asked the most sort of loudest question recently about how much he might be, but it's as far as it's gone. So we'll see if Danilo does make a move from Palmeiras in January. But other than that, it's just all a little bit quiet on the transfer market. We've only got about a week left until it really explodes into life. It'll be interesting to see if Arsenal do try and get any business done early. Like you, I hope they do. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they do really go for Mudryk, because he's a player I absolutely want to see in an Arsenal shirt. But Shakhtar aren't going to make things easy, so we'll have to wait and see what that happens. And that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Please do enjoy the start of your week. The build up to Christmas is absolutely here. Have a great time. Enjoy it. If you're working, if you're off, just try and take as much time as you can to enjoy yourself, you and your family, and I'll be back to speak to you as we build up to West Ham. Have a great day, everyone.